Hi, I'm Chef Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're using up some heirloom tomatoes or beefsteak tomatoes or whatever tomatoes you have in your garden or that you found in the farmer's market or the grocery store, whatever, and we're going to make a phyllo, flaky phyllo heirloom tomato tart. Very surprising, very delicious, and very easy since we do use phyllo dough. So phyllo dough you get in your freezer section. And I'll talk about that in a little while. But before we get started, be a subscriber. Please be a subscriber. And click that notification button so you get all my tips and videos because they're awesome. Okay, so I have a large sheet pan. It can be basically 12 by 16. It can be 15 by 10, whatever you have, but it should have sides. I have greased it with a little bit of olive oil and a brush, a pastry brush. If you don't have a pastry brush, you can just use, maybe a paper towel and just sort of spread it, or even use your hands and just sort of smear it all around. Now, I've taken a piece of phyllo dough. It usually comes, like I said, in the freezer section of the grocery store. You thaw it in your fridge, leave it in your fridge. You roll it out, it rolls out to these thin layers, and it almost looks like you're purchasing, if you can see right here, like a book. It looks like, sort of like pages of a book. And they can tear, unlike pages of a book, so be careful. So we need about 8 sheets of phyllo. They come standard size. So I put 1 sheet here, and then I'm going to coat it Jackson Pollock style with a little olive oil. I have about 1/3 cup of olive oil. You can use a little bit more if you want to, but you want to coat this all around because you want to get, you're building layers of your phyllo with oil. Some people use melted butter in between. I'm just using the extra virgin olive oil because it really tastes good. And I don't mind it. I don't mind if you want to melt some butter, use the butter. Now, in the meantime, I have to cover the phyllo with a piece of plastic wrap and wet paper towel. So I didn't do that just yet because I know we're on our way to our second sheet. So we're gonna stack phyllo oil, and then we're gonna put some buttery crushed crackers. Something similar to Ritz. It could be any buttery cracker you like. Grind them up. I think I used 1/2 cup, and you're just gonna scatter them. Just scatter them so it gives a little something crunchy in between the phyllo crunch itself. So there's a lot of textures going on here. And you can see all the crackers are not perfectly crushed. Don't worry about it. Okay? Not to worry. You want to get all around. And then you're going to take 1 more sheet of phyllo. Again, this is sort of like a very ancient book in one of those old libraries. You want to be super careful. So you're going to take this and you're going to lay it right on top. And if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. Again, we're going to cover this. Even if it's going to be but a second before you leave this beautiful phyllo and come back to it, you still want to cover it. Many times I have said, oh, I'm only coming back in a few seconds, and it's hard and crispy. So you don't want that. So I'm going to Jackson Pollock a little more oil. If you need a little more oil, you can always get some more. You don't want to douse it. You just sort of want to coat each bit because you want those layers to separate a little bit as they bake. So I have my oven preheated to 375 Fahrenheit. And we're going to bake this for about 25 minutes or so till it gets golden and crispy. And then we're going to put a beautiful filling on it and layer our tomatoes. It's delicious. Now these buttery crackers have a little salt in them, so I don't need to salt or pepper each layer. We're going to put a little salt and pepper on the top when we're done and we're ready to serve. This would be a great appetizer tart or a light dinner tart, whatever you'd like. All right, we're going to uncover our phyllo. And what is this? Number 3. So I think we're going to do number 3. And if a few pieces get stuck together, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You don't want to put 2 or 3 together. I mean, more than 2. But here we go. Push it down, cover up, Cover up your phyllo. All right, make sure it just stays moist. And then you're gonna oil, oil, oil. All right. So I'm gonna continue stacking. I'm gonna wait till I get to 8. And then if you have extra phyllo, like you will roll it up like you found it in the package, wrap it in plastic wrap, put it back in its container. I usually seal it with some tape and put it back in the freezer until you want to use it again or make this great tart again. So again, 25 minutes in the oven till it's golden brown. After you get to your 8th piece of phyllo, I'll see you back. So my beautiful phyllo base for our beautiful phyllo, heirloom phyllo tart came out of the oven. It has cooled. And if you notice, it's a little puffy, it's a little flaky, all good things. So we've let it cool down. We must let it cool down. And now we're going to make the filling. So in my bowl, I have 2 5.2 ounce containers of Boursin. You know, that herbed cream cheese. You can use any type of an herby cream cheese that you like, or you can even take plain cream cheese and add some chopped herbs, chives, parsley, a little garlic or granulated garlic, you know, the dried garlic, I mean. And then I have 1/3 of a cup of whole milk, plain Greek yogurt. And I'm just mixing it in. And I let the Boursin, oh, I can smell the herbs. It smells so good. It's like garlic and chives, smells yummy. And you just want to mix it so it's nice and creamy. I let the Boursin get to room temperature so it's nice and spreadable. And we're going to spread it on our tart and leave about 1/2 inch border. And I'm going to spread it with an offset spatula. And then I have some toppings, wonderful toppings. So let's just put a little bit of this. And you may hear some cracking. Don't get upset. A lot of cracking. It's supposed to do that. Don't get upset. Crack, crack. But that's what phyllo does. It cracks. Wait till it gets in your mouth. Then it'll really crack. And that's where you want it to crack. So this is a beautiful tart. Like I said, great appetizer tart. If you're having a bunch of people, could be for like a summer thing, a wine and cheese, could be for the holidays, anything you want. This would be amazing. So you're going to be very careful, and you're going to leave 1/2 inch border. All right, remember we're crunch, 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 crunch. So you just want to leave it 1/2 inch all around. I'm going to rotate this. So if you notice, it got nice and brown, which means nice and crunchy. And if there's a little bit of the crunchy pieces on top, don't worry about it. We're covering them with tomatoes. Surprise! Oh, yum, yum, yum. So good. So while I was allowing my crust to bake, my phyllo tart crust to bake, I actually took about 3 large heirloom tomatoes. I sliced them thin, about 1/4 inch thick, and I put them on a paper towel lined sheet pan. And I also mixed in some cherry tomatoes too, because I want to make it pretty, right? So you can use some yellow tomatoes, orange tomatoes, red tomatoes, whatever you have. And you can even use any tomatoes you find in the grocery store if you can't get them, you know, during, you know, the harvest or whatever. And you want to just make it at some point for company because it's so good. And then you want to slice it. And what I do is I lay it on this paper towel lined sheet pan and just put a little coarse kosher salt and let it sit. And what's happening is osmosis is happening. The water from the tomato, because tomatoes and most fruits and vegetables are mostly water. So the water will ooze out of it, which will prevent a soggy phyllo tart crust. So we don't want to be soggy on our tart ultimately. So we want to salt it a little bit just to draw out some water, and the paper towel will absorb that. So right now I'm going to just lightly, just sort of any way you want, make a little design with our tomatoes. It can be anything you want, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't even have to cover the whole thing. Just any way you want. And then you're just going to lay it nicely down and scatter your cherry tomatoes in between, so I'm going to wait to put those on. But you don't want to douse this with tomatoes because you don't want a wet and soggy crust, and too many tomatoes could do that. So you see what I've done, and I got one more baby here, so I'm going to move him over and put her in there. And then I just quartered some beautiful cherry tomatoes. I'm just going to sort of scatter them. I have some slivered Kalamata olives, pitted of course, and I've slivered them so that we can scatter them amongst the tomatoes. All right, this is sort of a fun tart if you're trying to impress somebody. I think it's really, really fun and really impressive, and people will say, oh, this is really amazing and so creative and unique, and you'll say, thank you so much. It took me all day long to make, and it really didn't. So we have our Kalamatas. I slivered them. I have about 1/3 of a cup. If you want to use more than that, less than that, whatever you want. Just gives a little bit of a saltiness, contrast to the phyllo. Remember, we got those buttery crumbs in there that you will barely taste, but they're there. Just to give it a little je ne sais quoi. You're not going to be able to maybe identify it. And if your friend, who always is cagey when she asks for a recipe or you ask for a recipe from her, she'll say, well, what is that special ingredient inside? And you'll say, I don't know. I just don't know. Slivered basil or chiffonaded basil, whatever you prefer, or torn basil. So get some fresh basil. Look how pretty that looks. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty. I think it's gorgeous. Use as much basil as you want. So I just said slivered basil to top, whatever. I like a lot of basil. A lot of basil. It adds so much beautiful green color. And then a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. We're just going to drizzle. Just a little drizzle, drizzle, drizzle. And that just gives a little moisture, a little bit of fatty moisture, you know, like a little bit of toothsomeness. Delicious. And then a little coarse salt. Just scatter it around. And if you are a coarse ground pepper person, of course, you can add some of that. So coarsely ground fresh ground pepper, or leave the pepper off if you want. Let's use it all, shall we? And you are ready to serve. Matter of fact, I would recommend that you serve it almost immediately, because it's not going to be any crispier than it is now. This is perfection. I hope you become a subscriber. I hope you make this glorious phyllo tomato tart. Till next time.